Hello, Mr. Gay. Thank you for coming. Mr. DePriest, thank you for coming. We're just waiting on Miss Adams, and we'll get going here shortly. Good afternoon. I'd like to call this hearing to order. Too often, small businesses tell us that the federal government ignores their concerns about the new regulation and threats, treats them unfairly. At a hearing in my district in this past November, I heard that the red tape is making more difficult and small firms, especially those in rural areas, harder to operate. Small businesses are even more worried about the flood of new mandates that are gushing out of Washington, D.C. And in the final year of the Obama administration, gives them grave concern. Last year, the administration finalized rules totaling $99 billion in cost, and many of those rules, like the EPA's Waters of the U.S. Rule, inflict significant burdens upon small businesses. This year could even be worse, as the federal agencies plan to finalize the rules like the Department of Labor's overtime rule and impose major costs on small businesses and will hurt their employees. Two offices, the Office of Advocacy and the Office of National Ombudsman at the Small Business Administration, were created by Congress to help small businesses with their very regulatory concerns. And I have mentioned the Office of Advocacy is an independently represents the views of and the interests of small businesses as regulations are developed. It also monitors agencies' compliance with the Regulatory Flexibility Act. The Office of the National Ombudsman provides a way for small businesses to anonymously comment on excessive and unfair regulatory enforcement actions. Today, the subcommittee will hear from the leaders of both offices and how they are carrying on their statutory duties. Given that the regulations continue to be a significant challenge for small businesses, it is critical that these offices work efficiently to reduce excessive regulatory burdens and ensure that small businesses are treated fairly. I'd like to thank the witnesses here today, and I look forward to hearing your testimony. And I'll yield now to the ranking member, Ms. Adams, for her opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the gentleman for being here. At nearly 30 million strong, small businesses are central to the U.S. economy. Responsible for 2/3 of net new jobs, they are the engine that drives job creation. The state of North Carolina alone is home to more than 800,000 small businesses. Essential to their success is ensuring that their voice can be heard when it comes to federal policy and regulation. This means not only reviewing regulations from a small business perspective, but also giving entrepreneurs a point of access to address their concerns. And this is where the Office of Advocacy and the National Ombudsman play a critical role. During today's hearing, we'll hear from both of these offices on how they're meeting their mandates and providing small businesses with a voice in the federal government. At its core, the Office of Advocacy works to reduce the burden of federal regulation on small businesses through its implementation of the Regulatory Flexibility Act. In 2014, Advocacy achieved nearly $5 billion in annual savings for small businesses. By right-sizing regulations, small businesses are better able to focus on their core mission. In addition to its regulatory work, Advocacy conducts research on small businesses. During 2014, it published 23 research and data products, exceeding its annual goal of 20 reports. I'm interested in how it sets its research agenda and in what ways it is prioritizing research related to minority-owned businesses, which make up 15% of U.S. businesses and are growing rapidly. The Ombudsman plays a complementary role to advocacy, providing small firms with the ability to directly resolve complaints about the federal government. Such a mechanism is critical as small businesses lack the resources that larger corporations have to address such problems. And I'm eager to understand how the Ombudsman is able to effectively handle its caseload, which reached a 6-year high last year. In addition, the Ombudsman is responsible for regional regulatory fairness boards, which provide small businesses with an avenue to raise concerns about federal policies. Ensuring that these boards are filled can be a challenge, and I'm hoping to hear an update on such progress as well as efforts to increase diversity on these boards. During the hearing, I'm hopeful to hear what's working and what's not. Ensuring that these offices function effectively and efficiently is essential to leveling the playing field for small businesses. So I want to thank both of the witnesses for being here today, and I look forward to your testimony. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. If committee members have opening statements prepared, I'd like to ask them that they submit them for the record. I'd like to take a moment and explain how things work around here, the timing lights. You'll each have 5 minutes to deliver your testimony. The light will start out green. When you have 1 minute remaining, the light will turn yellow, and when it turns red, you're out of time. So I ask you to try to stay within those limits, but we're here to hear from you also. So with that, we'll turn the time over to, well, I guess we'll do an introduction here first. Our first witness is Mr. Darrell DePriest. Mr. DePriest was appointed by the President Obama and confirmed by the United States Senate as the 7th Chief Counsel of Advocacy this past December. He leads the Office of Advocacy, which is housed in the Small Business Administration, but it is an independent from the agency. The Office of Advocates for the Small Businesses, as a new regulations are developed by the federal agencies. And our second witness, first I'd like to thank Mr. DePriest for coming to my office and introducing himself yesterday. Thank you very much. Our second witness is Mr. Admiral Earl Gay, a small business and agriculture regulatory enforcement ombudsman. I have a hard time saying that word, so I don't want to say it too many times too fast. At the Small Business Administration, Admiral Gay leads the Office of the National Ombudsman, which assists small businesses that believe they have been subject to an excessive and unfair regulatory enforcement action. He has had a distinguished career as a naval officer, an aviator, and an Admiral Gay. We appreciate your service. Mr. DePriest, we'll begin with you.
Chairman Hardy, Ranking Member Adams, and members of the committee, good afternoon. As the Chief Counsel for Advocacy, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to appear before the committee today to discuss the office and its accomplishments during fiscal year 2015, which I think is responsive to some of the issues that you raised in your opening statements. I have provided my complete testimony, and I ask that it be entered into the record. It includes all of Advocacy's recent activity, which I will just summarize in these brief remarks. When the Office of Advocacy was first created in 1976, it was charged with providing small businesses with an independent and credible voice in the federal rulemaking process. Too often, small businesses were unduly burdened by one-size-fits-all regulations from federal agencies. During the past 40 years, the Office of Advocacy has facilitated greater consideration of small business impacts through economic research, regulatory flexibility trainings, comment letters, roundtables, publications, and collaboration with federal officials throughout government. As a result, federal agencies treat advocacy as a partner in the rulemaking process in an effort to reduce the regulatory burden on small business. As the 7th Senate confirmed Chief Counsel, I will ensure that the office continues to work with federal agencies to mitigate the potential costs of regulation on small entities. To further describe our dedication to this cause, I would like to update you on Advocacy's efforts and accomplishments on behalf of small business during fiscal year 2015. During this time, Advocacy hosted 21 roundtables to highlight the concerns of small businesses on a wide range of topics, from OSHA standards to FAA regulations. In addition, Advocacy submitted 28 comment letters to 15 different agencies on a variety of issues. Specifically, the majority of these comment letters addressed either 1, the need for flexible alternatives supporting small business, 2, inadequate analysis of the impact on small entities, 3, improper certification of the rule, or 4, requests for greater outreach to small entities. The office achieved more than $1.6 billion in first-year cost savings as a result of its efforts on behalf of small business. Generally, these savings come from the difference in cost between the proposed rule and the final rule. Advocacy's efforts have also produced positive outcomes that are not quantifiable and are not captured in these cost savings projections. Advocacy's work with federal agencies and engagement with small businesses often help facilitate greater consideration of small business concerns in federal rulemakings and federal initiatives. For example, Advocacy's engagement with officials from the Food and Drug Administration produced more flexible regulations on animal food controls. Similarly, our work with the Federal Communications Commission improved competitive bidding rules. Advocacy's approach to federal agencies has also included facilitating greater compliance with the Regulatory Flexibility Act throughout the government. Since 2002, Advocacy has conducted formal trainings on RFA compliance for federal agencies and other stakeholders. In fiscal year 2015 alone, Advocacy conducted trainings for 126 federal officials from a variety of different agencies, exceeding our annual goal by more than 25%. In addition to these formal trainings, Advocacy offers federal agencies technical assistance regarding RFA compliance. Since its creation, Advocacy has provided timely and policy-relevant information on important issues affecting small businesses. During fiscal year 2015, we released 26 research publications on several topics relevant to today's economy. Finally, the 10 regional advocates who are part of the office play a vital role in maintaining an open dialogue with the vast majority of small entities that operate outside of the Beltway. They interact directly with small business owners, small business trade associations, and state officials to educate them about the benefits of regulatory flexibility. This past fiscal year, Advocacy's regional advocates participated in more than 500 outreach efforts, exceeding their annual goal of 360. In closing, I would like to thank the committee and its staff for its continued support of the Office of Advocacy. As Chief Counsel, I look forward to working closely with you on important issues affecting small entities across this country. Now, if there are any questions, I would be pleased to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. DePriest. Admiral Gay, you have your 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Hardy and Ranking Member Adams, for providing me this opportunity to comment on how the Office of the National Ombudsman can and does help improve the regulatory environment for America's small businesses. I look forward to working with this committee to improve the regulatory enforcement environment for our nation's 28 million small businesses. I'm also excited that Darrell L. DePriest is now on board as a Chief Counsel for Advocacy. I meet with Mr. DePriest weekly to discuss synergies our offices execute to ensure a fair regulatory environment. We both agree that a strong working relationship with frequent communication and collaboration is critical to the SBA's mission of counseling and protecting America's small businesses against unnecessary regulatory burdens. Now, while the Office of Advocacy is responsible for ensuring fairness in the implementation stages of federal regulations, the Office of the National Ombudsman, or ONO, works to ensure regulations are being fairly enforced once they are enacted. Pursuant to the Small Business Regulatory Enforcement and Fairness Act, or SBREFA Act of 1996, this office was created to serve as a powerful voice for America's small businesses. In fulfilling this role, we conduct public hearings, outreach events, and roundtables in each of SBA's 10 regions, where we provide small businesses with forums where they can voice their concerns and comments about regulatory enforcement actions without fear of retaliation. We work with and encourage regulators to address entrepreneurs' comments and concerns promptly and wherever possible to opt for compliance assistance and education rather than moving directly to levying fines and penalties. Additionally, we rate federal agencies on the timeliness and the quality of their responses in our annual report to Congress. Our office also facilitates Regulatory Fairness Board, as you talked about earlier, ma'am, or RegFair boards in each of the SBA regions. Each board consists of 5 small business owners who serve as the eyes and ears for small businesses in their communities, states, and regions. They work with local business and regional business offices addressing any concerns with regulatory enforcement issues. Now, those reg boards are very vital assets, and they continue to be advocates for our efforts. In addition to receiving comments regarding regulatory fairness, our owner office also received comments in other issues such as contracting, access to capital, loan policy and business training, counseling, and other support. During FY15, our staff conducted more than 80 outreach events and 4 regional regulatory fairness hearings. Through the aggressive efforts of our district and regional offices, these roundtables and hearings continue to be very well attended. In my brief 3 months on board, this office has held 1 regulatory enforcement fairness hearing, 3 small business roundtables, 1 in Nevada recently in Florida, and several outreach events with small business owners and entrepreneurs. I've met and established personal relationships with senior leaders at 12 federal agencies, discussing ways we can work together to reduce regulatory burdens against small businesses. During the next 6 months, we plan on conducting several roundtables and hearings, and also hosting our annual meeting with members of the 10 regional fairness boards. It's important to note that all of our hearings, meetings, and partnership programs with small business stakeholders have been in close collaboration with other federal agencies. We truly value their critical presence and participation. I provided you a schedule of our activities for FY15, as well as the planned events for the first 2 quarters of FY16. In closing, I'd like to state that on behalf of Administrator Contreras-Sweet and the great staff in the Office of the National Ombudsman, we look forward to working with all of our teammates and the members of Congress to eliminate unnecessary regulatory burdens on small businesses as they continue to fuel America's economic prosperity. I thank you again for the opportunity to appear here today, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral Gay. I appreciate you both and your testimonies, and thank you for being here again. I'd like to start with Mr. DePriest. As you know, small business owners are feeling like they're drowning in a sea of red tape. 82,000 pages last year of new regulations written. Can you tell us a little bit about what your office is doing to prepare for this upcoming flood of new red tape that's coming to be able to make sure that we protect those small businesses?
Certainly. I am blessed with having a terrific staff that has been through this process repeatedly, especially as we move towards the end of this administration, to make sure that every regulation that's proposed goes through the Regulatory Flexibility Act analysis and is analyzed for its effect on small businesses. We will continue to do the things we do, such as the roundtables, coordinating the panels, doing the analysis, having our economists look at it, everything that we can do to make sure that while an agency is able to achieve its regulatory goal, at the same time, we're looking for ways to minimize the effect that any proposed regulation would have on small businesses.
Thank you. Over the last couple of years, the Office of Advocacy has filed public comment letters with federal agencies raising significant concerns about the RFA compliance. For example, the Office of Advocacy wrote the EPA and the Corps a comment letter on the Waters of the United States rule and asked the agencies to withdraw the rule and comply with the RFA. The agencies ignored the advocacy letter and finalized the rule without conducting a SBAR panel and assessing the impacts of the rule on small businesses. While the small business community was pleased that the Office of Public Advocacy stood up for them, some view it as a failure of the office also. What legal authority do you have and for the Chief Counsel of Advocacy, and is there anything that you need us to do to help you ensure that you have the ability to make sure that agencies comply?
Thank you. The office has, under the amendments to the Regulatory Flexibility Act, particularly the Small Business Regulatory Enforcement Fairness Act, has the ability to file amicus briefs in court if there's a legal challenge to a regulation. The comment letters that we write, such as the one that you referenced, can also be used as evidence in court to see whether the agency has complied with the Regulatory Flexibility Act. Now, insofar as whether there is more that we need, in talking with the staff, that we found that the vast majority of agencies comply with the Regulatory Flexibility Act. Now, our mantra is better information, better rules. So we try to put small businesses together with the agency so that they get the input from small businesses. For example, in the waters of the United States, we did conduct roundtables and with representatives of small business, with the EPA, and with the Corps. So they heard the concerns of small business, and we'll just have to see as we go forward, as we monitor the situation, what effect it has. Now, I understand that that particular rule has been enjoined by the courts, so we'll continue to monitor it.
Thank you. Admiral Gay, your office's annual report indicates the office is spending a lot of time helping small businesses resolve federal procurement disputes. This appears to be duplicative work of other offices within the SBA and the federal government. Can you explain what your office does when it receives the comments from the small business regarding the federal procurement?
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. As in all cases, we receive the comments. In the comment forms, we ask that the small business state what their issues are, what they want to come out of it, and the impact, excuse me, that the regulation has on their ability to operate. But most importantly, we require them to provide supporting documentation so that we have ample evidence to support their issues. Once that happens, it comes to my office, and I have 2 outstanding case management specialists. Our office is 4 now. We were 7. We're down to 4 now. And we are working hard to replace those 2. But at any rate, once the case management specialist looks over the case, I prepare a letter signed by myself to the corresponding entity stating the issues that were in the comment. The agency has 30 days or less to provide me a timely and quality response. So when that happens, I in turn review the letter that they've returned back to me, and I usually phone calls to the commenter to state what's happening, and then we send that letter back to the commenter.
Thank you. My time has expired. I'll turn the time over to Ms. Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, gentlemen. In 2014, Advocacy published 23 research reports. One of my priorities is to increase research into minority-owned small businesses as a means of understanding the challenges that they face. Mr. DePriest, how do you determine these research priorities, and what type of research are you planning on for minority businesses for this year?
Thank you. We solicit, insofar as our economic research is concerned, we solicit ideas from the small business community, from members of Congress, from members of this committee, from the mother SBA, what they might want us to research. And in that process, we try to pull together what our research agenda is going to be for the year. Now, insofar as minorities, that is a special focus of the office. When the office was created, the statute creating it specified that we're supposed to do research on issues involving minorities. As a matter of fact, we're doing some research right now on minorities in the technology area, minorities and immigrants, and what their effect is in the technology area. As a matter of fact, in a couple weeks, I'm be going out to San Francisco and Silicon Valley to talk with individuals who are involved in the effort of increasing minority entrepreneurship. And at that time, we're also going to present our research on what's going on and things that can be helpful. So we're mindful of our requirements to do so, and we actively do it and do it as best we can.
Thank you. Advocacy received over $9 million in the recently enacted omnibus, with staffing making up nearly 90% of the office's budget. Mr. DePriest, do you believe that this funding is sufficient for the office to carry out its responsibilities?
Yes, I believe that it is. In talking with the members of the staff since I've been there, I believe that it's a sufficient amount of money for us to carry on our activities.
Well, good. Most people want more. Advocacy and Ombudsman play different yet similar roles in supporting small businesses. They both provide a conduit for small businesses to raise problems with the federal government. Admiral Gay, how do you coordinate with each other to ensure that your work is not duplicative? It sort of gets back on what maybe the chairman.
Yes, ma'am. As I stated before, I meet with Darrell weekly, sometimes bi-weekly, to discuss the systemic issues that I've seen, or my case management specialists have seen in dealing with the small businesses' concerns in the comment forums as well. We also participate in roundtables together. As a matter of fact, the recent one that we had out in Las Vegas with Sarah Wagner, sir, we had, Yvonne Lee, who works under Darrell's advocacy department, attend those, as well as fairness hearings. I attended a U.S. Air Force contracting summit, and we go toe in toe. We usually attend the same forums and business, get-togethers, so we're not duplicative at all. We try to reduce the duplication.
Okay, I was going to ask if you thought Congress should consider merging the offices, considering the overlaps. So I guess your answer is no.
Not right. Well, give me 2 more months, ma'am, and I can come back and give you my opinion on that.
Okay. Then I would also, as a connected question, would that result in better service to small businesses at a potentially lower cost?
Well, I think right now, I think we work together pretty closely. Before Darrell and I got here, the people who are in our individual offices, they know each other. They work close together. They have a very nurturing relationship, and so our job as leaders is to maintain that and make sure we grow that congeniality.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mr. Chair, you're back.
Thank you. Turn the time over to Ms. Velasquez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. DePriest, President Obama issued 2 executive orders, 13563 and 13610, as well as related memoranda, to help reduce regulatory burdens on small business. Advocacy has provided counsel to the administration on these measures. In your view, have these executive orders made any difference in reducing regulatory burdens to small businesses?
Yes, I believe they have. As I said during my opening remarks, we calculate that we saved businesses in the first year $1.6 billion. And that's the difference between what the agencies proposed as their initial rule and what they ended up with after consultation with us. So we think that's a significant savings. As I said, there are other savings that are perhaps not as quantifiable, but we think $1.6 billion is significant savings. We're constantly looking for ways to represent the interest of small business. As I said, we do roundtables where we try to put the small businesses together with the agencies. We help with the panels. We do everything that we can to be the voice of small business and reduce the burden. Now, I think that the executive orders that the president has issued, some of which lead to actually looking back at regulations and see whether they're still remaining in force. We do that. We help the agencies put together an agenda for doing that look back. So I think that we're on the right track there.
Okay. Mr. DePriest, under Dodd-Frank, the newly created Consumer Financial Protection Bureau became subject to the Small Business Advocacy Review Panel process. Given that the CFPB is a newer agency, can you comment on advocacy's experience in establishing the panel process there?
Yes, I can. The CFPB has really embraced the process. They have worked. I did have the number here. I have to have to get it to you, but there was they've done a number of the panels that they're required to do. And in some instances, we think that there's been a benefit insofar as the rules that they were thinking about versus what they proposed. So even though it's a newer agency, they come at it and we come at them with the history of what we've been doing with OSHA and the EPA. And I would say that the agency has embraced that process.
Well, one of our concerns is we don't want for regulations to hinder the ability of small banks to provide access to capital for small businesses. So this is why it's so important that you work with the CFPB to make sure that consideration is taken when they issue regulations regarding the cost of credit for small businesses.
I understand. Yes, we do that, and we'll continue to monitor that.
Thank you. I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. If you don't mind, we're going to go with second round if everybody's fine with that. Mr. Admiral Gay, I'd like to ask on procurement complaints, people getting small businesses not getting paid. Are you dealing with that within your office, or are you getting it out to the appropriate people?
Oh, yes, sir. As we excuse me, as we deal with the federal contract disputes, that is one of the issues that we see. And that is that businesses not receiving prompt payments on contracts. So yes, sir, we do see that along with time delays in processing of the contract and so on and so forth. So we do see some of those that involve undue late payments.
The question, I guess, so is these are regulatory issues. Are you referring them over to the proper?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Another question for you, Admiral Gay. According to the office's website, there are board member vacancies on 6 of the 10 regional regulatory fairness boards. For example, Region 9, which includes Nevada, there's only 3 board members, and none of them are from my home state of Nevada. Can you explain why there are so many vacancies, and what are you doing to fill those vacancies?
Well, first of all, thank you for funding. That would allow me to leave the Beltway area to get out there. It's all hands on deck effort, and you can't do that well here inside the Beltway. And so what that does is allow me to go out and get recommendations from the Reg Fair board members and also members of Congress as well on people that that are viable candidates to serve on these boards. Another issue is the vetting process. The vetting process, as you may or may not know, is meticulous and it's prudent. And I think it should be because these candidates are representing the federal government. They are speaking on behalf of the government as well.
If I may on that.
Yes, sir.
Your selection process, are you involving small business owners, operators, and officers that serve within that regional regulatory fairness
area?
The area?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Could you also please provide the committee with a list of current regulatory fairness board members for each region and the date that they were appointed by the SBA?
Yes, sir, I will do that.
Each regional regulatory fairness board is supposed to have 5 members that are appointed by the administrator, receiving recommendations from the chair and the ranking member of the House and the Senate Small Business Committees. The current and previous chairman of the House Committee on Small Business have never been asked by the SBA for a recommendation. I believe this is a little bit concerning that we've never been asked, and it appears the SBA is not complying with their statutory requirements.
Well, I understand the statutory requirements, and I will ensure that any new members on my watch will be reviewed by the chairs.
With that, I'll turn the time over to Ms. Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. DePriest, Advocacy is required to carry out the panel process at EPA, OSHA, and CFBP. Can you comment on what's working in this panel process and what can be improved?
I think that what's working is that the agencies are listening to the concerns from the small entity representatives and implementing less burdensome regulations. To follow on Congressman Velasquez's comment, particularly with the CFPB. They've held 6 of the panel since 2012. Some of the issues involve mortgage loan origination and arbitration and payday lending. And we think that we've seen some benefits here. For example, with the mortgage servicing rule, small entities with service less than 5,000 loans are exempt from some parts of the rule. And so that was a result of the agency listening to the concerns of small business. As I said earlier, the mantra is, better information, better rules. And these panel process allow small businesses to be directly involved in the process of writing the regulations. And I think there's definitely a benefit to that.
One of the ongoing concerns with the Regulatory Flexibility Act has been the ability of agencies to continually forego the requirement in Section 610 that require periodic review of the rules. Do you believe that this requirement should be strengthened?
I would have to really look at that and talk with my staff about their experiences with that. My understanding is that we have helped agencies map out a plan for how they do their 610 compliance, and I'd like to have the opportunity to talk with the staff to see whether that is a possibility. Now, I know that later on this year, I will have the opportunity to presenting some legislative priorities, and I will take a special look at that to see whether that should be one of the ones I recommend.
All right, great. Admiral Gray, your office is responsible for operating 10 regional regulatory fairness boards, which are comprised of small business owners. What challenges do you face in getting small business owners to devote their time to serve on these boards?
Again, ma'am, it is a segue or a reverse segue back to the previous question. I think that in my short time on board, from what I've seen is we have the Reg Fair board members are very engaged. They are very, very engaged. And they represent small business as well there. The challenges that we have right now, again, are getting the vetting process, getting folks through the vetting process, and me getting out, conducting increased outreach events to identify those viable candidates. And you had an earlier comment about diversity of the board. And it's my job, our job, to ensure that board remains diverse, and we're working hard to increase the diversity. But I need to get out and be on the road to make sure that I recruit viable candidates for your approval.
Okay, so you have a process for ensuring that the boards are diverse in terms of minority businesses and their participation?
Yes, ma'am. I think if you look at our report, you will see that our membership is diverse.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Your office had in 2014 its highest caseload in 6 years with 420 cases. Do you have sufficient resources, staff, and otherwise to handle this volume of cases effectively?
Yes, ma'am. As I stated earlier, we were at 7. We're at 4 now, and that came because someone retired, someone was promoted, someone was transferred. But our boss has given me the right HR resources to fill those 2 cases, the 2 positions that need to be filled, and we should have those 2 positions filled in the next couple of weeks because I need to get out on the road.
Great. Thank you very much. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'll turn the time over to Ms. Velasquez.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I have one more from Mr. DePriest. Your office actually submitted a letter to the Department of Labor on the overtime rule, and the department analysis, it said, I quote, does not properly inform the public about the impact of this rule on small business entities. And due to those problems with the analysis, DOL cannot fully consider alternatives that would reduce the burdens on small businesses. Can you elaborate on the Office of Advocacy concerns on the overtime rule?
Well, I actually think that the quotation that you made. It really does sum it up. I mean, when we were first presented with this rule, we held several roundtables across the country, 3 in Washington, 1 in New Orleans, and 1 in Louisville on this issue. And the letter that we wrote was really based upon the comments of small business concerns that these changes will add significant compliance costs and paperwork burdens. We're going to actively work with DOL to seek regulatory alternatives that have been recommended by small businesses. I mean, one of the ones that they're really concerned about is the difference between or how this regulation will affect those in low-wage states versus other. I mean, one of the reasons we went to New Orleans and Louisville was because dollars travel or spent differently in those regions, and we've been advocating for the Department of Labor to take that into account. Now, we understand that the DOL plans to release their rule later this year, so we're looking at it anxiously to see what they determine.
So at this point, have they indicated whether they're going to revisit and redo their initial regulatory, or give you any indication?
I don't have any further information on that.
With that, well, like to thank you both for coming. I appreciate you being here and your testimonies. Appreciate what you do, and if there's anything that this small business committee can do to help strengthen those issues, will help strengthen our small businesses. Is that what we're here for? As we know, our small businesses operate nimbly and swiftly to build and create and offer some of the most innovative and reliable goods and services in the marketplace. They pour their hearts and minds into their companies. However, navigating the rulemaking process and complying with regulations is a huge challenge. This administration is making it a lot more difficult for small businesses to keep their doors open. That's why your office and duties are so important. Small businesses need to continue to aggressively advocate for them and assist them. This subcommittee will continue to closely monitor your offices and your activities and work to ensure that the federal agencies comply with their statutory obligations under RFA. I ask unanimous consent that the members have 5 legislative days to submit their statements and support materials for the record. Without objection, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I get stuttering so bad I can't understand it.
I think
I'm
have to slow down a little bit at the beginning.
Well, see,
I know.
like you said,